Hello YouTube and welcome to today's video. In today's video I want to explain the term strong and weak side. You might have heard these terms through watching pro games such as LEC, LCS, LPL, LCK, or if you watch some high elo streams they might be talking about strong side and weak side. So what is strong side and what is weak side? So I'm gonna come up with a few examples of specific matchups where a lane can be strong side and weak side. And then we're just gonna go through different scenarios and team comps. So I have made a scenario here where we have Malphite versus Riven top, and we have Kassadin versus Ahri mid. We have Hecarim and Sensei in the jungle. We have Draven Thresh versus Diana Jinx. This is just a hypothetical team composition that I've made up that you might see some of these champions in solo queue, and you might wonder, well, who's strong side and who's weak side? So first we need to talk about what is strong side and what is weak side. So strong side is the map that you want to be playing around. So strong side are the lane that you want to be ganking, giving a lot of resources and try to gank ahead. Then on the other side we have weak side, who are the lanes that we typically want to avoid. And if we want to do anything on weak side, it should be help them push a wave, cover for them, ward for them, make sure that they feel somewhat safe. We don't want to give our weak side too many resources. So why does this weak side and strong side term even exist? This is because junglers cannot gank all three lanes. So we have 3 different lanes that both junglers can gank, and junglers cannot be on all 3 of them. This means that the jungler will choose 1 to 2 lanes that they want to play around, and those will then be strong side, and then the lane that we're not playing around will automatically become weak side. And this matters both for junglers and laners, that everyone is on the same page and everyone gets to the same conclusion on who is strong side and who is weak side, because laners need to play accordingly to, are they strong side or are they weak side? So to give an example, in this situation we have Malphite versus Riven top lane. This means that Malphite is weak side. The reason why is because Malphite is not a champion we necessarily need to get ahead in order for Malphite to be useful. Because if Malphite goes 0 and 4, that doesn't really matter too much in team fights, because Malphite just needs to press R and be our main engager in the team. Meaning that it doesn't matter if we get Malphite ahead or if he falls behind. His job is more or less just to engage and be a frontline for the team. Then we have Kassadin versus Ahri. So if we're playing as Hecarim, it's very difficult for us to gank an Ahri due to the fact that she has a charm, and at level 6 she will basically have her ulti to get away. On top of that, our Kassadin is not really the strongest lane to gank because he's kinda weak in the early game, but he scales, and once Kassadin hits level 16, this champion is really strong. This means that we don't really want to gank mid lane, but we want to make sure that our Kassadin feels safe, that his waves are in a good spot. So if the wave's in a bad spot, we come in and help him push the wave so he can reset. And if the wave's in a good spot, then everything is good. We just protect him, make sure that he cannot get dove, make sure that he has some vision so he can feel safe and get to that level 16 and scale. So we don't really want to play too much around mid, but we know that mid lane eventually can carry us if he hits level 16 and we do end up going to late game. So we want to make sure that he doesn't fall behind. Then we have bot lane consisting of Thresh and Draven against a Diana and Jinx. So Draven is a really strong champion level 1, and Thresh has really good gank setup because he has a hook, he has a flay, and he has the lantern, making these ganks on bot lane a lot easier for us. On top of that, enemy bot lane is super immobile. They don't really have a way to get out. Of course, Jinx has her E that can zone off, and Diana has her tornado. But if Thresh lands a hook, or if Hecarim can some way come from behind or press R onto them, then more or less it's gonna be a kill every single time. So this means that in this situation, top side is weak side, because Malphite is a tank, and typically tanks are weak side, simply because that they just need to farm as much as they can, then they will get their items, they'll frontline, and they will be the main engager. And they don't need to be ahead in order to be useful. In this situation, our mid lane, he is not strong side, but he's not weak side either, because it's our scaling champion. So we don't want to fight too much around mid lane. We just want to make sure that Kassadin can feel safe and that he can farm as much as possible without dying. And then bot lane is our strong side, because this is the lane that we want to get ahead. It's really important that Draven gets 3 kills in the early game and doesn't die 3 times in the early game. So let's say that Malphite gets 3 kills. That's great. But if our Draven is 0 and 3, that's pretty bad for a team comp. So it's quite important that if anyone falls behind, it's our Malphite, because he just needs to press R. But our Draven is 3-0 and really, really strong, because he is going to be the main carry together with the Kassadin once Kassadin gets to scale. So this means that as the Hecarim, we want to avoid topside, meaning that we start on topside and path downwards towards our bot lane. Now, if we take a look at Sensei's point of view, he also has 3 lanes to gank, and we will see that now he has the Riven versus the Malphite. Because Malphite is a tank, it doesn't matter if they put Malphite behind, meaning that if Malphite goes 0 and 3, but Draven gets ahead, that's a big problem for the enemy team. So Sensei also does not want to play for topside, even though Riven is a snowball champion, because at some point Malphite will simply become too tanky and outscale Riven naturally due to being a tank. So top side is weak side, meaning that this lane is not going to be the lane that the junglers will gank for and don't want to help out and don't want to give too many resources to. They can go for free kill gank if it's basically a free kill. Like let's say Riven is really low on HP and Malphite has ult, Hecarim can go up and gank. And same for if Malphite doesn't have ulti and he's low and Riven can engage on Malphite, Sensei can go top. It's fine to go top lane for a free kill, but it's not the lane that we want to play for the first 15 minutes of the game, because it doesn't matter if we get top lane ahead. Then Sensei has Ahri mid lane versus Kassadin. This is a matchup that Sensei really wants to pressure heavily due to the fact that Ahri has good setup with her charm, and Kassadin is a scaling champion and he's really immobile pre-level 6. So Sensei would very much like to interact in mid lane and get a bunch of ganks off and make sure that Kassadin cannot scale for free and try and put Kassadin behind. On top of that, Sensei also wants to make sure that Jinx can scale, because Jinx will outscale the Draven, meaning that Sensei wants to cover bot side, making sure that we cannot dive enemy bot lane as the Hecarim, or potentially gank himself, because the enemy bot lane will most likely play really, really aggressive. And if Sensei can basically make sure that Jinx doesn't fall behind in the early game, and that Ahri gets ahead and make sure that Kassadin falls behind, then Sensei has basically done his job as a jungler. So if we take a look, typically the lanes that snowball or who are strong in the early game or has good lane setup are strong side. So in this situation, Draven is really, really strong in the early game, meaning that this is going to be our strong side. And as the example, we have Draven Thresh combo. Most of the games, I'd say 90% of games, it's going to be bot lane that will automatically become strong side, because it consists of 2 people, and AD carries are really, really good scaling champions typically, that you definitely want to make sure that they don't fall behind. And if they can get ahead, that's just great. But there are exceptions. And an exception could be, let's say we have Ezreal and Yuumi. So if we have Ezreal and Yuumi all of a sudden, let me just refresh here. If we have Ezreal, Yuumi bot lane. This bot lane is super, super weak, but it scales. It's a really, really safe bot lane, but they have no way of engaging. Because the only CC we have is Yuumi ulti. But the Yuumi ulti is not even going to be that strong, because the follow-up damage from Ezreal is not that big. He basically just pokes, farms, gets his items, and then he starts doing damage. So in this situation, strong side is not bot lane. Then let's say on top lane we don't have a Malphite anymore, we all of a sudden have an Irelia. And let's say on the enemy team, they no longer have Riven, they instead have a Camille. So this is a carry versus carry top lane matchup, meaning that if we can get Irelia ahead, she can 1v1 Camille, and she'll be stronger than Camille throughout pretty much the entire game if she plays it correctly. So because this is a snowball matchup on top lane, because there's not a tank in top lane, then all of a sudden top lane becomes strong side and bot lane becomes weak side. If we're taking blue side as our point of view. So this means as a jungler, we wanna path from bot lane towards top lane. So why is it important for laners to understand who is strong side and who is weak side? Well, it matters because first of all, the laners need to understand I, as the jungler, or potentially also the mid laner, are not gonna play towards your lane. I'm not gonna try and help you get resources because I have someone else who is more valuable to get ahead or protect. Meaning that you are more or less left on an island on your own, and you're just supposed to survive for as long as possible. Whereas strong side needs to realize, okay, I'm the strong side, I'm the one who will get a lot of resources, a lot of help, it's my job to basically carry the game. This also means that when it comes to playing on the waves, the strong side either want to play really aggressively, so play really aggressively and then trade really aggressively, because if Hecarim starts on bot, if we take the example of we are now Hecarim jungle, he is pathing from bot towards top, then Irelia should not just be free farming and have the wave under the tower for Camille, because that means we cannot dive her. But let's say Irelia cannot push in the wave or do some really good trades onto Camille so that we can dive. That's completely fine. Instead, Irelia wants to hold the wave a little bit more even, or let Camille slowly push in, because this means that Camille is overextended and Hecarim can gank. This also means that enemy bot lane should not be, or our bot lane should not be playing really aggressively, because then they are overextended and the bot lane can call for a gank from their jungler. So let's say we take the Sensei for example. So Sensei can now go ahead and gank our Ezreal yuumi while we are on top side of the map. So we can never gank bot lane, and we should not gank bot lane. So instead, our bot lane should be playing passively under the tower, try and safely farm, while we are trying to kill enemy top laner. So from a laner's point of view, you need to come up to the same conclusion as pretty much everyone else in the game. Am I strong side or am I weak side? And typically it's either top lane or bot lane that is strong or weak side, and mid lane is more or less always relevant because it's the middle of the map. Sometimes you will have a scaling champion, so you don't want to fight around mid lane, you just want to let them scale. Example, Kassadin. If you have a Kassadin in the mid, you don't really want to fight too much in the mid lane, you just want to make sure that he can farm safely. But if you have a champion like LeBlanc really wants to play aggressively and is a really strong early game champion, then you want to play around mid lane. You want to fight a lot in the early game. You want to make sure that LeBlanc, maybe you can tower dive the enemy, maybe you can gank the enemy, maybe you can push in the enemy and then you can rotate. Many different options that you can do. It all depends on how is the mid lane matchup. So therefore it matters a lot that everyone comes up with the same conclusion as to who's strong side and who's weak side, and then you play according to that. So yeah, as I said, most games bot lane is strong side, but there are exceptions. And on the other side, most games top lane is weak side, but there are exceptions when there is carry versus carry top lane. So now let's say that you play for a strong side and you got your strong side ahead. How can you help your weak side? When it comes to helping your weak side, you don't want to focus on them, meaning that if you do 5 ganks in a game, most of them should be towards your strong side and not towards your weak side. So how can you help for bot lane in this example? You can put a ward for them. If the wave is in a bad spot, you can help them push the wave so that they can recall and protect them in case that the wave is slowly pushing towards them. In case you feel like, okay, enemy jungler can come and they will go for a tower dive, then you as the Hecarim also just maybe from base, just stay around Crux and make sure that you can also be here in case that the tower dive. Now this is a perfect situation. If everyone comes up with the same conclusion and everyone plays according to their strong or weak side, and the jungler also plays towards strong side, then everything is good. But this is not gonna happen, especially not in solo queue. In solo queue, a lot of people say, oh, I'm strong side if I'm playing a tank because I have good gank setup. That's not really how it works. But let's say everything goes wrong and let's say our top lane just gets solo killed 3 times in a row. Even though he was strong side from the team comp point of view at level 1, if he misplays and goes 0 and 3, then there's no point in really playing for the Irelia anymore. Then you might want to take a look at, well, how's my mid lane doing? Can I do something in mid lane? Can mid lane all of a sudden become my new strong side that I want to be playing for? Can we get mid lane ahead? Can we do something off mid lane? If you can, then that's great, you play around that. And if you can't, then you have to come up with a plan B. So your plan A was play for my top side in this situation because he's strong side. That completely fails because Irelia got solo killed. Then we come up with a plan B. Our plan B could be, well, what about mid lane? How does mid lane look? In case we cannot play for mid lane because maybe it's a Kassadin versus an Ahri, like the previous example, well then we can't do that. Then we have to come up with a plan C. And the plan C could be, well, I can cover for a mid laner, making sure that when he hits level 16 as Kassadin, then he is still gonna be a strong champion. Or you can say, okay, even though my bot side is weak side, I can still try now and gank for them because my plan A failed and plan B, playing around mid lane, doesn't really work. So plan C is basically to cover for bot lane, making sure that these can also scale. So what does this mean? This means that now we don't want to be fighting a whole lot, we don't want to be ganking a whole lot, we want to focus on farming, making sure that our laners can safely farm, at least for mid and bot lane, and then try and scale until we have our items and power spikes, and then we fight. So I see this a lot in pretty much all elos in solo queue, because I've close over 300 people, and everyone, not everyone, but 90% of people are not thinking about the game level 1 when I coach them the very first time. They're not thinking about matchups, they're not thinking about what is my role as a jungler, who should I play for, how will enemy jungler maybe play, how will he be pathing. They don't think about it. They instantly just go into autopilot mode, and then already there, the game is not gonna be like a good quality game or something that you can learn from. So, when you are in champion select, when you're in loading screen, and when you are waiting for the minions to come before 1:30, in those minutes, you need to think, am I strong side? Am I weak side? And how do we win the game? And this doesn't matter if you're playing laner or if you're playing jungler. Everyone should do this. So if you're playing a lot of tanks in the top lane, you should realize most of the time you'll be playing weak side. So that means you should not play aggressive, you should not overextend yourself, you should not look to trade heavily against your opponent, you should just look to safely farm, get some tanky items, do your main engage, and become a frontline. If you're playing a scaling champion in the mid lane, for example, you should realize that, okay, I'm playing a scaling champion, I don't need to fight that much, I need to farm. On the other hand, if you're playing a really aggressive early game champion in mid lane, such as the LeBlanc, maybe a Fizz, maybe another assassin, you need to realize, okay, I need to play aggressive, I need to get ahead, basically. So you play aggressive, maybe you set up for a dive, maybe you push in your opponent and you rotate, maybe you go for a 4-man dive on bot lane, something. Basically, you need to play aggressive, you need to get ahead. And as the jungler, you need to also realize who's strong side and who's weak side, and then determine, okay, if top side in this example is my strong side, I need to start on bot side and path towards my strong side. Because your first gank should be towards your strong side. Now this is not going to happen every single game, because anything can happen in solo queue, but you still want to be thinking about these things in early game. And then let's say your plan A works, well that's great, then you know exactly what to do. And you don't have to come up with a plan B, because everyone is playing as they should. But if plan A fails, then we need to adapt, and we need to say, okay, well plan A failed, what can I do instead? What is going to be my plan B? And then you play according to your plan B. And you just make your plan B on the spot. Because your plan A should always be you play towards your strong side, get your strong side ahead. But your plan B is typically if your strong side is failing, dying 1v1, 2v2, whatever it might be, or just pushing in the wave without trading so you can't dive, and then dies afterwards to a gank, stuff like that, then you just have to make a plan B on the spot. Who is then you're gonna become your new strong side? What's the new game plan? Do you outscale? Do you need to group up a little bit early? Can you take any objectives? Can you counter jungle, invade? Can you do anything? You just do that on the spot because it's a unique plan B from time to time, according to how the game is. So that's basically the definition of strong and weak side. I came up with a few examples. I hope everything made sense. If it didn't, then leave a comment in the comment section down below, and then I can go through some more examples or explain it in a different way. But if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on the video. It will help out on my channel a lot. And if you want to see more content from me, then remember to subscribe. And otherwise, I hope to see you guys in my next YouTube video or on my next live stream on Twitch. See you guys.